Program Manager for Southeast Asia and acts as a big sister of the Google communities. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause please for Aileen.
Oh my God, ang hirap po ng kasunod ko. Lalo ako na pressure, scare. But I just have 15 minutes actually, and I would like to go through quite a lot of things today. So my name is Aileen Apolo de Jesus. I lead outreach program for Google in Southeast Asia. But what exactly is my role in crisis response? So masasabi ko po, crisis response has been something that's been really personal to me. So si Andrew kind of mentioned this morning. I am a survivor of Typhoon Pablo. I had to be fished out in my mom's basement in 2009. And mind you, the only thing that I managed to save on that day was my desktop. Yun lang. Ganun ako geek. So, ready na po ba yung slides? Okay? Okay. So, what do I exactly do for crisis response? So, back in 2009, I was the only Googler in the Philippines. And of course, when the crisis happened, the only thing I managed to send out was, told my boss, I'm sorry, I'm underwater, I won't be able to work for a week. The next day, they surprised me, a Google crisis page came out. And ever since that day, I've been involved with doing crisis response for the Philippines, and I do this in my 20% time. And I've been trying to map the Philippines in the last 4 years through our volunteers. So what does, next slide please, what does the crisis org team do? So they actually develop technology that can provide citizens with the critical information they need and help put in emerging information at their fingertips. So this, I think, is something that's very, very important, especially for our country. 1 out of 10 Filipinos are actually outside the country. I'm technically also an OFW. So what exactly do we do? So every time there's a crisis happens, what we put together information regarding natural disasters and humanitarian crisis to make the public, see all the relevant information regarding the emergency. So the crisis team has actually done more than 40 pages already across the globe, 5 in the Philippines in the last 4 years. Okay, so I wanted to go through quickly some of the tools that we actually have. One is public alerts. So we actually integrated public alerts into our search and also on Google Maps so that when people, whenever they were looking for information about crisis, they would see it immediately without needing to really dig into information. We also have Google Maps and Google Earth, and every so often during crisis, having updated satellite imagery is very important. So in the Philippines, this is something that we've been trying to provide as well, and mind you, there are times that we aren't able to give it because when there's heavy flooding, of course, there's heavy clouds, and it's difficult to get satellite imagery. Another thing that we do is put together crisis maps. So last month, one of the things that we had Tropical Storm Maring, which caused widespread flooding. So it basically, for 3 days in Metro Manila, there was no work because there was so much floods. So the crisis maps actually put together layers of different information. So the layers include official information from government, and then, of course, weather information, and then we have volunteers on ground who help actually map information like shelters, flood situations, and later on you're going to hear our Google Business Group Manager for Makati, Ross, talk about Rescue PH. So this is another example of a crisis map. So one of the things that has been also very useful, and we've tried to actually implement this in the Philippines, is Person Finder. A lot of you probably saw the implementation of this one during the tsunami in Japan, we actually had more than 600,000 records put on Person Finder. So Person Finder actually allows users to put in information about missing people and also update those records whether these people have been missing. So I remember during Typhoon Sendong, when we did this one, we actually didn't get that many records, but it was still very useful because there would be people from other countries who are looking for their loved ones, and they use Person Finder. So other instances that this has been really used was in Chile with more than 70,000 records, and also Haiti with more than 55,000 records. Okay. So one of the things that we always do as well is creating crisis-specific landing pages. So in the Philippines, the very first one that we created was actually during Typhoon Ondoy, and then followed closely by Typhoon Pepeng. I'll talk more about that one later. Okay? And when you also go to Google and when you do searches, let's say you search for earthquake, you're going to see actually instant information about all these things that are happening. And of course, we have the Google Crisis Response site that is up all the time, and it's an always-on crisis site. So it's where we put information. In the last week, I've been seeing quite a lot of crisis happening in other parts of the world. So this is the anatomy of a response. So I was telling you guys earlier, I do crisis response on my 20% time. Ang equivalent po nun walang tulugan. So because every minute from the time that somebody asks help from us to put together this crisis page or this crisis maps, everything is actually recorded minute by minute. And, well, since most of the crisis response team are found in the other side of the globe, pag ako, 24 hours. Okay lang yan. So, I actually wanted to talk more about how we've been doing crisis response in the Philippines and what exactly does it help in. So, essentially, the crisis pages that we put together emergency information so that people can see what's happening within their neighborhood or within the neighborhood of another city. So during Typhoon Ondoy, the team in Singapore, through Andrew actually, put together a crisis page. So, and in a few days, because Typhoon Pepeng actually came in, na-update siya, Ondoy and Pepeng na siya. So, what were the features of the first typhoon page that we made for the Philippines? It included the crisis map. And then with this map included, of course, the weather information. It also included shelters and also flood information. And this was the time that the Google Developer Group in the Philippines started to band together to help as well for crisis. And what they essentially did was to put together the flood information for the maps. In Typhoon Sendong, more than 135,000 were actually displaced by this typhoon, with over 500 casualties. And later on, with about 40,000 who were left homeless. Information was actually really hard to get during the typhoon, most especially because it was situated in another province. And more often than not, when crisis happens, walang kuryente, di ba? Walang kuryente, walang internet, walang may phone, ganon. So basically, what I had to do was to get in touch with our communities on ground and also get help from the nearby provinces who had better on-ground information about the typhoon. So during Typhoon Sendong, what we actually did as well was to turn on Person Finder because there were so many people missing, and so that local government can also utilize this information. So there was somebody on ground really, painstakingly inputting all the missing people information. Okay. So last year, we had the habagat around August as well. So if you remember, last month we had like widespread flooding. A year ago, it also happened. More than 24 hours of rain caused widespread flooding in the National Capital Region, Region 1, 2, and 4A. But during the time that we did this crisis page and the crisis maps, I noticed a huge difference from the first time that we did it in 2009. So why do I say that? Because during this time, in 2012, we actually had better maps. In 2009, it was really, really difficult for us to map all the shelters, map flood situations. Why? Because the maps were barren. So because we launched Google Map Maker in 2009, and volunteers locally have been slowly inputting, adding places, adding roads, and all these things. But it was difficult to do crisis response. And maybe you're thinking, bakit naman importante yung map, diba? So I've had actually the chance to sit down with the Philippine Red Cross as well. And they said that one of the things that's important when they're doing rescue and relief is good map information. So, kasi syempre, diba, yung magre-rescue naman, hindi sila taga doon. Taga-labas sila. And more often than not, hindi nila alam yung lugar. And the only way that they will find it, more often than not, diba, flooded, hindi mo na makita yung street signs, you'd be coming through helicopter or nakaboat sila. How do you look at it? You look at it through maps. And I have like a gazillion stories about how heroic our mappers have been in the last few years. So during the habagat, we also turned on the person finder instance to help find missing persons or like help like people looking for their loved ones find more information about it. Okay. Hindi ko pala napindot. Sorry. Okay. And then, of course, there was Typhoon Pablo just before Christmas. And this was a larger typhoon. One of the biggest wins, I think, that we had during Typhoon Pablo was being able to work better with government. And in our view, one of the things that we need to do in Google is to be able to teach all these tools so that government can make a better, better inform their citizens. And during Typhoon Pablo, actually, the official gazette was the one who led in providing information about the crisis. And I was really, really happy when this happened because it meant that we're slowly being able to translate or transmit the technology to people who really need it, to people who really have the official information. And because they have the information, they are in a better situation to provide it much more quickly than we can. Okay, so last month as well, during Tropical Storm Maring, I was actually here in Manila when this happened. And in the same way, I saw how much different our response was because of the maps and because government has been able to really put together the information. So in the past, one of the struggles that we had was being able to collate the shelter information. And we noticed that the different agencies actually had different information each. So nakiusap kami, sabi namin, one of the things that we're hoping government can do is be able to collate this information so that when the maps are actually created, then it is better, it is more informed, and of course, mas malinis yung information. And during Tropical Storm Maring, we were also able to push out emergency flooding information onto free zone. So, because we know that people, they go to the web, and of course, mas marami na gumagamit ng phone ngayon, diba, to access the internet. So, with free zone, you can actually access emergency hotlines for free when you access it. So, in my last 3 minutes, I wanted to show what users have actually contributed So mapping is something that's very, very important. And if it was just the 20% time I was doing for the Philippines in the past, now I've been tasked to actually teach also other countries within Southeast Asia how to map their country. So in the last 4 years that we've had MapMaker in the Philippines, we've actually been working with our communities on ground. So we have the Google Business Group, the Google Developer Group. Now we have Google Student Ambassadors as well. And of course, the mapping community in the Philippines. In 2012 alone, they actually had 93 map-ups across the country, teaching more than 2,000 mappers. And in the last quarter, this year, from July to, well, the end of September, we actually have about 45 map-ups and about 3 ongoing today. So mapping is actually very important because aside from being able to find direction or, which helps you get to your meeting or to the places you want to go to, mapping is very important because it helps in putting together and visualizing all this information. So we have volunteers tirelessly mapping our country. But I wanted to show you a video. Pwede na po ba pakita yung short video? Just to show you how the mappers have been contributing. So this is actually a time lapse of how Metro Manila has been mapped. And if you want to see more or see like how your province has been mapped, you can also check it out on YouTube. Okay. Those were actually from the tireless efforts of our volunteer mappers from the Philippines. So mind you though, during the flooding last month, we noticed that out of the more than 500 shelters, the list that was given to us, we were only able to map half. So why? Because there's still a lot of public schools, a lot of barangay halls, a lot of covered courts that have not been mapped. So for my final slide, wala. Last slide, yeah. So for my final slide, I wanted to make a call to action to everybody since we are all in the Social Good Summit. So this morning, Andrew showed you guys how to actually map, how to contribute to Google MapMaker. All you need to do is go to mapmaker.google.com and edit your neighborhood. So kahit na po yung public school lang within your barangay o yung barangay hall nyo o yung covered court nyo or yung health center within your barangay ay mai-map nyo, malaking tulong na po mabibigay nito para sa ating crisis response. Thank you very much.
Miss Aileen, can we have you back here for questions? Thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions from the audience? None. I think they were suitably impressed, yes? So, ladies and gentlemen, a last round of applause, please. Our late friend is over here.
I was chasing Gov Joey down. I want an autograph. and a selfie with my favorite comedian. Okay, our next speaker is a medical doctor who